Hello, fellow classmates. Here we are in week 3 of our leadership course and have been entrusted with the task of teaching each other something useful in regards to leadership. In Module 1, we took a look at different leadership philosophies, and in Module 2, we discussed gender and cultural differences for leadership. Regardless the philosophy different leaders follow or the gender or cultural issues they must navigate, maintaining a clear focus is critical to effective leadership. My lesson today for you is the importance of focused leadership. The lack of a focused leader is one reason for mediocrity or even failure of organizations. A clear sense of purpose and direction coupled with a plan will help leaders reap success. There are many quotes about focus and leadership. One of note is by Jack Welch, the former chairman and CEO of General Electric. He states, "Good business leaders create a vision, articulate a vision, passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion." Let's consider a couple of analogies. First, Eric Kaufman, the author of Four Virtues of a Leader, used the analogy of a race car driver to illustrate focus. He talked about the fact that the race car driver needs to keep his eyes on the road at all times. If he ever strays from keeping his eyes on the road to putting them towards the wall, he will surely crash. Having a clear and purposeful focus, keeping eyes on the path towards the intended goal, is critical to focused leadership. Another similar way of looking at focus is to consider a river. The banks of the river help to guide the water to its destination. If the banks were not there, the water would flow without control. The banks are necessary to channel the water to make, much like a vision helps to focus leaders toward the intended results. In regards to the vision and needing to stay focused, I'm going to suggest 4 principles that focused leaders use in order to help them stay on the right path. These are adapted from the book called Balanced Leadership for Powerful Learning. If you are not familiar with it, you might note it as one to check into. Principle number 1 will be to focus on clear goals. Principle number 2 is to focus on one thing at a time. Principle number 3, focus on what matters most. And principle number 4, focus on systematic strategies. Principle number 1 is to focus on clear goals. School leaders are responsible for identifying the goals and objectives for their school in order to ensure student learning. Goals should include high expectations as well as a shared buy-in by all stakeholders involved. In Balanced Leadership for Powerful Learning, Goodwin, Cameron, and Hind point out that once the school leader establishes the goals and objectives, energy and resources can be focused on achieving them. Principle number 2 is to focus on one thing at a time. Goodwin, Cameron, and Hind also point out that truly focusing on one or two things requires principals and school leadership teams to have the courage to put all of their eggs, so to speak, in just one or two baskets. It may be difficult to do, but finding one thing that needs to be focused on and sticking with it will yield the strongest results. With the need to focus on one thing at a time, it is important to figure out what matters most, which is principle number 3. Christian Schwartz is a church development enthusiast who has written many books. In his book, Natural Church Development, he identified the minimum barrel idea. I won't go into the church application here, but I think it fits well to support the what matters most principle. Look at the bucket. Think of each stave as representing something to focus on in order to reap success. If we picture the water is only going to go as high as the lowest stave. If we look at this from a perspective of what to focus on, it would make sense to focus on the weakest area, the lowest stave, so the bucket can hold more water. There are many tools that we can use to determine our weakest areas in education. Academic success starts by analyzing data. A gap analysis is one method school leaders use to determine where to place their focus. essentially the weakest stave of their bucket. Steps include identifying your future state, where do you want to be, analyzing your current situation, and then identifying how you will fill the gap. The final principle I have for you today is to focus on systematic strategies. Once the weakest link is identified, focused leaders put plans in place that are systematic and strategic. One way to ensure this in the education world is through effective professional learning communities, PLCs. And a recent Education World article listed 6 steps for focused PLCs. First is to study. Study where you're at, where you need to be. Your TEKS are your guide. The second step is to select. Select one area to focus on. In our particular situation, we need to be focusing on writing. That is our weakest area. Step number 3, plan. Plan some instructional lessons that are going to be strong and directed towards your weakest area. 4 is to implement. Teach the plans that you have put together. Number 5 is to analyze. Analyze your formative and summative assessment and data as you go along. Based on that data, then, you want to do step number 6, and that would be to adjust, make adjustments and reteach or move on. I hope you've gained a nugget of information from this presentation that will help you as a leader with focused leadership. I hope you have a wonderful evening.